Welcome to the WellPlayed DLC podcast, Australia's juiciest gaming podcast. I am Zach Jackson. Joining me is James Wood,
Hello, gamers.
Mr. Adam Ryan,
Hello, I'm here too.
and Nathan Hennessy.
Hey.
Every week, I never know what to expect, whether it's going to be overblown and ridiculous, or you'll barely say a word, which is what we got this week. You're a bag of cats, mate. I don't know what to expect.
That's fun. I've never been called that. That's a step up
Never
from
heard
dickhead,
someone
isn't
call anyone that. Yeah.
How are we all? It's been a few days since we saw one another. We were at PAX this weekend. How exciting.
Aren't we
feeling?
overly keen to spend time with each other? We all departed, Saturday or Sunday. 2 days later, we're like, I haven't had enough. Let's get back together digitally. But good. I'm good, mate. I've had not enough sleep and I'm back at work. But apart from that, pretty good.
Punch my ticket too, mate, because I'm feeling the same.
Yeah.
Make that 3 tickets.
Oh, look at us go.
Well, I'm a perky boys right up because you know what? It's now daylight savings and that has an effect on life in the suburbs and it's traffic clown season. We're back at it again tonight, boys. Me and April went into dinner and had it squared on an intersection. All 4 sides, bearded jugglers. Northern suburbs breed.
Where's the video?
Smell the talent.
Where's the proof?
Bearded Jugglers, good name for a band. At PAX, Nathan, you and I got to see KV's Kieran Verbruge's mind just crumble in front of us while you and I were having a conversation with him standing nearby, and you mentioned the intersection clowns, which of course we've had this conversation before, and I kind of glossed over it. And I looked over at KV, and his face just was contorting, and then had to stop in and interject, and was like, "Wait on what? Come again?" So you're spreading the awareness of the jugglers. So that's good of you.
The irony of this being, without doxing the old boy, it's like it's within walking distance of his place, like
which I think sent him into a spiraling dread, knowing that they were nearby, which is fair.
A very hot spot near his place that he just coincidentally hasn't experienced. So maybe he's going to get out and do a bit more, evening walking now that daylight savings out, knowing that there's a bit of an event in there for him.
Or maybe he'll take up juggling.
Oh man,
join in.
I guess inspiration
We can only
is
hope.
one thing you could take from him. Yeah.
Speaking of clowns,
Zach Jackson.
Correct. I am living proof of someone who is sucked into just a good piece of marketing. So as you boys know, about 10-ish days ago, I bought some Dr. Squatch. I don't know if you've seen those ads on
Can't avoid them.
wherever you've seen them on, social media, YouTube, like wherever it may be. But they've just released a new series of ads featuring, big fan of the podcast, but featuring Sydney Sweeney.
Tell us your thoughts on Sydney Sweeney, Zach.
That's
No,
where I'd
don't.
seen that brand before. Oh, Zach.
I
Yeah, I
know. Look, I've always been somewhat interested just
Of a sucker.
to try it. Just to, yeah, bit of both.
Right.
Just to kind of see what what it was. What's the difference between these boutique soaps and stuff that you buy, the Doves and the Imperial Leathers and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, and then Sydney Sweeney told me I'd be a clean little boy if I bought these. So I bought 6.
He's
and the
so
body wash.
bloody hygienic now, boys. You wouldn't believe
So,
it.
well, here's the catch, right? Is that I think it comes from international. So the shipping fee, like basically I had to pay like a good amount. It was like, it wasn't
I believe
worth,
it.
yeah, that's how they get you. So
Might not
I
be
got-
worth the soap, but it's worth Sydney Sweeney's
I
love.
thought
so it
Sydney
balances
Sweeney
out.
was how they get you, but yeah.
well, Sydney Sweeney's definitely how they got me. Got me over the line. I was there, but not quite ready to commit. But yeah, Sydney Sweeney.
For those who don't think that marketing works, they need to heed this.
That's it.
Well, Sydney
So sad.
Sydney Sweeney Body Wash Genie is how they phrase it in one
Jesus.
of the ads. Anyway, got 6 soaps and a body wash just to give it a crack. And so far, it's not too bad. Not too bad. Don't know if I'll be a returning customer, but smells all right. So
How many have you tried out of the 6?
well, what I was doing some reading, and they suggest that you should cut them into like little pieces, so like blocks of 3 or 4, because apparently the way that the ingredients or whatnot they melt a bit faster than normal soap. So if you cut them into like smaller blocks, you don't quite the whole thing doesn't melt. So I've only
I
tried the
like how
one.
Just
you've even got to cut them into like wartime rations. They're really appealing to like young male desperation.
I've got to keep
I,
every
you two can
little
act
bit
like you
of
live in a
Sydney
trench,
Sweeney I
boys.
can for as
I
long
can't
as I
help
can.
but I can't help but visualize Anna walking into the kitchen with you with 6 blocks of soap and a kitchen knife, and trying to be like, no, but Sydney Sweeney told me I need to cut them up to save them.
To be fair, she didn't. Some random person on Reddit did. But anyway, yeah, I've tried the spearmint basil and it's not too bad. So very
Nice.
foresty. Smells a bit like dirt.
Spearminty?
So a little
Oh,
bit, yeah.
perfect. Just what you want when you're having a shower.
Smells natural. Anyway,
Smells like I've been rolling around in Tassie.
we move on. We move on. Look, if you want any I've got a discount code if anyone's keen, so just hit me up.
I'll get a discount code off you when they sponsor us, mate.
That's the spirit.
That's it.
Get Sydney Sweeney on the show. Yeah.
Oh, go on then.
Big fan. Actually, that might be one of my predictions for next year. Thanks, James. Anyway,
That she's going to be on the WellPlayed DLC podcast.
all right. Do we have any games you want to talk about? Do you want to get straight into the review content and then into the PAX talk? Adam.
I have one. Yes, I've become obsessed with Kill Knight. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast prior that I was going to buy it and play it, but I bought it and played it, and it's exceptional. It's from Playside, which is one of the bigger Aussie dev teams. It's like an isometric, not quite roguelike kind of action adventure. It's like a score chasing game. So there's no roguelike element to it. You kind of just earn points, spend it, buy guns. There's no like die, reset your progress or anything like that. But it plays like something that would be a roguelike, right? Mark has been absolutely fucking annihilating my scores, and it's been raising my blood pressure, something terrible. So I need to regain the title, which I'm going to have a crack at doing after the podcast. But yeah, shout outs to Playside. Kill Knight is an absolute banger. And speaking to one of the guys at PAX, I think it was only like 10 of them working on it. It was like this little passion project that just kind of ballooned out into something a bit bigger. So yeah, play Kill Knight. Kicks ass.
Shout out.
Sick.
Very good. All right, let's get anybody before I move on. Anybody else for any
I
content?
think it's worth mentioning the preview embargo for this lifted last night at the time of recording. I'm currently playing through Life is Strange Double Exposure. We're not going to spend much time on it here because I feel like I would just relitigate a lot of this when we get to the review discussion when the game launches anyway. But so far, that game is not at all what I was expecting it to be. I went in relatively cynical, quite prepared for this to just be a, I think I said to someone over the weekend, like it's a smash glass in case of emergency Life is Strange story to bring Max back. And yet, I have quite a few notes already. I am completely smitten. I cannot wait to see. I just hope it ends as well as it starts, basically, is all I really need out of it at this point. But it is far more mature and far more quiet than I was expecting. It feels like exactly the kind of narrative you would give to someone who played the original, 12 years ago at this point, however long it's been. There's been a real aging with the audience is the vibe I get from this. So we'll keep an eye out on that in the future.
Lovely. Well, Nathan, you have been playing probably the biggest game of the last couple of weeks. Metaphor, ReFantazio.
Do we give it a
Tazio?
pass? I thought it was pretty good.
That's not bad. It's better than most of his attempts at other languages. So, I mean, A+.
Yeah. Oh, that's all smiles all round, I think.
Tell us
Shall
about
we
it.
talk metaphor ReFantazio? of which I'm still not comfortable pronouncing either myself.
Isn't there an N in there?
Is
Wait,
there
never
an N in
No,
there?
no, no,
Yes,
no,
there
no,
is.
no, don't worry. Just let it go. Carry on.
Okay, boys. Metaphor ReFantazio. So, like, I'm quite surprised that this has actually turned, like Zach said, this has got to be one of the bigger games of the moment, which wasn't necessarily something I was expecting. This is a swords and sorcery fantasy type game from Atlas, the developers of the Persona games and Shin Megami Tensei games, as well as various other RPGs coming out of Japan. And this is a new IP for them, developed from specifically an internal studio at Atlas called Studio Zero, made up from creative minds who had worked on leading the Persona 3, 4, and 5 projects. So there's a lot of that DNA here. This is very much a kind of Final Fantasy type of RPG. So they've taken out a lot of the demon fusing and demon collecting aspects of the Shin Megami Tensei games and the Persona games, and what they've done is replaced it with a job system. So the story is quite hard to explain straight up on Metaphor ReFantazio, so I'll have a very quick condensed go or stab at this. But basically, in this fantasy world, creatures, or rather, bipedal beings that look like furries are considered like the normal sort of dominant species of this fantasy world, where folks that look more atypically ordinary humans looked upon with fear, disgust, and absolute vulgarity. Like, your main character, your protagonist, is one of these human appearing characters called Eldar from very much a maligned tribe. And their journey is taking them to the capital of this continent in order to find the person who has just recently slain the king of the kingdom. So the king of the kingdom has just been slain by this person that started this military coup called Louis, very ambitious character who thinks the king is weak, and with a strong display of military force can take over the country. But something goes a bit awry. After he is able to kill the king, which in itself was quite unusual because the royalty are considered great magical creatures and they're normally like invulnerable to any kind of attacks. After the king's died, Louis tries to move in and claim the throne, but the king had cast a spell before he died that said if anyone was to assassinate me, rather than someone being able to just simply steal the throne, whether it's an heir or otherwise, there's in fact just going to be a democratic election in which like a spirit version of me will oversee after my death and will make sure that there's like rules and regulations to it. And it wildly becomes extremely bureaucratic. James, jump in.
I think it's crucially important that you contextualize for people how exactly he oversees this process.
So the king literally in his after he's died, he then assumes the visage of a moonface Ayla Majora's Mask, which then proceeds to hover over the capital of the continent of Grand Trad. And from that vantage point, as a moonface that oversees the city, it will then follow the contestants of this election around the continent to adjudicate. Zach.
You say Grand Chad?
Trad, short for traditional, like.
Oh,
So
right,
that's
trad.
a T
Right,
for
okay.
tango, my friend,
All right.
not a C for Chad.
No Chad stamp on
Yeah,
that game.
so
Hmm.
the story at the heart here is actually that of an election. The main driving force of this plot through your 70 to 100 hours is going to be this election that's occurred where obviously the usurper is trying to win the influence of the people and therefore maintain an easier path to the throne, because obviously their plan to just kill the king and take the throne's not gone so well. There is a twist here, of course, that the king's own heir, their own son, has been cursed by the usurper and is in this kind of like sleeping beauty permanent coma of sorts while the curse is active. Now the main character is being told that if you can somehow assassinate the usurper who's made this curse, you can lift the curse. All can be well, you've saved the prince and the kingdom will go as it should be with, the royal monarchy still doing its thing. And what you're going to do is you're going to represent the prince. You're the prince's proxy. You're going to stand in for the prince who can't represent himself in the election. And then it gets into a lot of, because I said this is quite bureaucratic with old mate King hanging over things and watching the proceedings. He's making sure that none of the elected or electoral candidates can even hurt one another. He's got to make sure this is all done professionally. So it's very diplomatic. I want to say that in short, this is a wildly original take on a kind of political fantasy, one that I think is executed wonderfully. And yet there is still room for, I think, a little bit more. I'll come back to that. So the opening hours of this game, as it sets up that narrative, is actually quite glacial. It takes about 16 hours for the game to actually get to the point where you realize, okay, here's who the major players are. The king's in the heavens. Everyone considers me a piece of shit because I look like a human. So I got an uphill battle. I got to change the entire continent's mind and make sure everyone wants to vote for me on the prince's behalf. So you've got this uphill battle. The next 60 hours are going to involve you, changing hearts and greasing palms. It's a real Zach Jackson game, and it takes its time doing so. And you are a politician in sorts. You're a sword and you're a sword and sorcery wielding politician who's going to go through a series of dungeons around this continent in order to solve people's problems, which is going to gain you standing. That's kind of the essential arc of the game. It's going to copy over Persona's calendar, so you're going to have certain amounts of days to clear certain dungeons for the plot to move forward. During those days, you're going to schedule appointments with your followers, your supporters, as the game calls them, which is old mate Adam there from WellPlayed.
Hello,
You'd like
Adam
to
from
jump in?
WellPlayed. So
Come on
you
down.
mentioned that there's the calendar aspect, which from memory, now I won't claim to be a big Atlas fan or like a Persona stan or whatever. But from what I'm aware, there was kind of like a time crunch to those games. Like you needed to make decisions of like, who are you going to hang out with? What classes are you going to go to? This, that, and the other, because, time was finite. Is it the same kind of thing here, or is it a bit more generous with the time it gives you so you can get all of like the side content done and all of that sort of thing? Or are you still kind of pushed into making decisions throughout?
So the short answer would be there is absolutely a chance for a person who is playing this on their first run through to see and do everything. And that's not something that you're always going to get with the Persona games. You usually end up using a guide or being very, very lucky. This game is very generous. It does have the time crunch. It retains that. It's very well tuned that you're always going to feel that little bit of pressure right up until the second or third or maybe just even the last day where you've got to clear a dungeon before the game decides the plot's got to move to its next objective. But as I say, like all the side stuff, all the socializing, and you don't attend classes here, but it has other activities to stand in for that. You've got what's called kingly virtues. So you're going to be leveling up things such as tolerance. And in order to level up tolerance, it specifically asks you to seek out minorities from other. Did I glitch out there? Oh, sorry, guys.
No,
No,
that is just the best thing I've ever fucking heard. Like, sorry, bro, your tolerance level isn't high enough. Like,
but this is exactly what happens, right? So you want to pursue the next stage of your romance or relationship with the character, and it goes, my tolerance just isn't high enough to understand what they're going through. And to level up your tolerance, the game specifically pushes you towards having conversations and interactions with people representing maligned outlier minority groups. Like, you're not going to increase your tolerance by spending an evening with a noble. You're going to increase it by spending it with a tribal person who has to wear a mask in public because they're
10 out of
they're
10.
just going to get spat on.
Yeah, I kind of love that. Although I feel
And-
like I'm the opposite. I think my tolerance would go up if I had to fucking hoity-toity with the 1%ers. But
Yeah.
each their own.
But obviously,
Hoity-toity.
that's another aspect of it as well. You got to be greasing palms all over the place.
Shaking babies.
But it's just so smart in how it weaves all of these things together in terms of not just gameplay, but also everything comes back to being a metaphor. And it's maybe a little bit obnoxious depending on who you are, but I thought it was a lot of fun how it just tries and ties everything together on several narrative levels without being too overblown. This is a very approachable game, probably the most approachable of Atlas's RPGs. They've taken every effort to make sure that anyone of any RPG skill level can play this and more importantly, finish this. So very generous in that regard. as I said, please, Adam, come on. I love this round table talk. Let's go.
The finish part you said.
Yes.
You said it took about 16 hours for all of the characters to come into play and the intrigue to get there and for the narrative to kind of get off the ground.
Oh no, that's just to
16
finish the prologue.
Fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So if it takes 16 hours to get to that point,
to get to chapter
you're
1.
hitting credits. what were your hours up to by the time you actually got there?
Brilliant question. So, all honesty, I hit credits at I think 89 hours, just shy of 90. In saying that, though, to my shame, to try and meet the deadline, I was skipping cutscenes, not major ones, but like side cutscenes and chunking through dialogue with like just auto skip on and stuff like that. Like I missed several hours. So I reckon the person that takes their time with this will stretch this out to 100.
Yeah. Okay.
And they'll have seen everything. It doesn't beg a replay. A couple other things here. So just as a negative, this suffers a problem that I have with almost every major Atlas RPG. The last third of the game is just kind of placeholder. So what I mean by that is there's no new enemies, no new bosses, no new abilities, no new classes. You're just going to be grinding the same shit you've seen for the last 2/3 of the game right through to the end, and then it's going to hit you with several unfair boss rushes that take each time you attempt it will take several hours. So it's a grand test of patience. In saying that, they're very generous with how you can tweak the difficulty here. So you can basically, if you get really frustrated, you can turn this all the way down and have it play itself so that you can see the credits. So this is a game I'd happily like recommend to someone like my mum, for instance. I've mentioned her before. Like I'd recommend One Piece Odyssey to her. She's a big One Piece fan, and that game wants to be finishable by everyone. So does this. So that's
notable anime lover, Mama Hennessy.
Yeah, well, this game's chock full of anime. So in the Venn diagram, she's right there in the middle, and this game's the other side with One Piece. Just quickly, Adam.
I have two more questions. One is prior to you wrapping up and giving the score, and the other one is after. Sure. I know this is a turn-based game. It's Atlas RPG.
Certainly is turn-based game.
Are aware of how that works, but there is like an action element to it. There's a real-time element to it as well. From what I understand,
ever so slightly, it's just expanded on a kind of real-time action element that happens before the turn-based encounters launch in Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. And what that involves is normally as you're running around the open, you see an enemy, you can go up to it and mash square a few times to swing your weapon at them, and they're going to then try and attack you as well. So you've got to try and dodge out of the way. If you do enough attacks to them, you might stun them and therefore gain an advantage in the actual combat encounter. Cool thing that this does, though, is as soon as your power is raised to a certain level and these fights become trivial, the game will just let go. Okay, you've smacked that enemy. We're not even going to go to the combat. Here's your experience. Go to the next one.
Cool.
It's a beautiful bit of streamlining. This game has sanded down all of the fluff and frustration that might come with the Persona and Shin Megami Tensei formulas to the point where some old school fans might feel it's a little bit too streamlined. I think it's wonderfully generous. The UIs, they speak for themselves. If you've seen any images or any videos of this game, you've seen the haphazard mishmashes of weird fonts and out of frame bits of interface that kind of skirt around the screen, and it's all a bit kooky and zany. It looks fantastic in motion. It is beautiful and extremely readable, and you never get lost, and it always points you in the right direction. So between form and functionality, it is immaculate. Gold star, 10 out of 10. It's original. I love what this could be a new franchise for Atlas, because it does do so many new things in terms of creative ideas for the studio, even though the gameplay is not really anything we've seen that's new. It's just a great refinement of everything they've done before. As I said, unfortunately, the last 30 odd hours or so of the game, you're not going to see anything new. You've seen it all before, including all the bosses. So that's just it felt like a bit of a time waste to me. I expect, as we see with every Atlas game, in about 2 or 3 years' time, we'll get the remixed version of this game, like we did with the Personas and Shin Megami Tensei and every other Atlas RPG, where we get an actual expanded, filled out back third of the game with fresh bosses and content and what you would expect, like what's going to be the definitive edition. Because of that, there's really a big lack of variety in that end game. and that's a bit of a bummer. And some of the late game dungeons, they only have like 2 or 3 tile sets. Side dungeons, late game side dungeons, they look a little bit repetitive. Minor criticisms. Overall, I think this is obviously a brilliant game, and it's really exciting to see that if folks that might have found Persona a little bit intimidating, because it is a fairly complex game, even though it doesn't look it, they'll be able to jump on board with this, and I think they'll have a great time, just as long as they are okay with a turn-based role-playing game, because it's not for everyone. It's going to be a 9 out of 10. So
Huge.
we're seeing them. Apparently, folks are loving this. So reviews have been out for a few days now. Have you seen how this is trending on the aggregates?
Mm-hmm. Very excited.
Oh, well.
Very high.
It's sitting at sort of the low 90s.
Up there with Astrobot.
Up there with
Oh,
Astrobot.
get away from Astrobot.
Playing with the kings. So it's
Maybe
really cool to see
Astrobot should
this.
learn some tolerance.
Best hang out with the peasants then. You've answered the question that I was going to ask you, which was, do you think this game will get Royale/Reload? So what would you call it then? What fun little name would you tack on to the end of it? ReFantazio? I hate myself. I'm sorry.
ReFantazio.
Reef.
Did you say ReFantazio?
No, DeFantazio?
Oh, fuck.
Anyway.
So is Metaphor the franchise name?
Metaphor's the franchise name. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Lovely
Not
work.
the game we expected, is it? It's a bit of a weird one.
I cannot wait. I think I'm going to pick it up over Christmas and just disappear into it for a bit.
You can do that.
100 hours.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
I feel sorry for your back, my friend. Mine's recovering.
Never feel sorry for James's back, but yeah.
That's right. Well, speaking of James's back, he has been reviewing
quite a few things actually, but yeah.
Quite a few things. But one that you have done is, I'll let you go with this one, James.
Yeah. So this is Nomada Studios' follow-up to Grease, which you might know as Gris or Gree, depending on which corner of the internet you've been hanging out in. It is actually Grease, though. I looked this up in the while I was waiting to talk. Called? So yeah, had to make sure. This one is called Neva, or Neva, I guess, depending again on which corner of the internet you're hanging out. So yeah, this, like, for those who don't know, Nomada seem to be pretty at home in very like hyper artistic stylized platformers that are usually very flow of consciousness, momentum based. It's not really about levels and traditional structure in any sense. It's just about telling an emotional story through largely, almost entirely through visuals and music. There's no dialogue. There's the occasional like slight bit of spoken word, like individual words, but that's about it. That continues on into Neva. But this time they have added combat to kind of liven things up. So in Neva, you play as Alba, who is a young woman who is paired up at the beginning of the game with this like giant, gorgeous white fox dog creature that has antlers that are made of trees. It's a very striking design. It looks incredible in motion as well. You are in some sort of like heightened fantasy world when a plight of nondescript, gooey, black evil starts taking over the land. It is incredibly Ghibli coded because this substance occasionally forms into small white faces, depending on what form it wants to take. And it is also taking over a very picturesque landscape and corrupting it and slowly turning it into death, essentially. In the beginning of the game, the mother wolf dies, and you are left with the cub, who is the titular Neva. And then the story plays out over 4 seasons as Alba and Neva progress through a much more linear story than these guys have done before. As Neva grows up, and the two of them loosely try to stop the invading evil force. I mean, again, there's no dialogue. There's no written anything in here. You're not going to get like an explicit tale from this. But it is more structured and it is more identifiable sort of as an experience than Grease was, because Grease was very abstract and very flowy and free form and gorgeous and wonderful. Neva, in turn, is really good, but not great, is kind of where I've landed on this. The reason I missed Embargo, I mean, one, PAX weekend was crazy. But on top of that as well, I didn't quite know how I felt about this game. I finished it right before I left for the trip, and I was just kind of chewing on it over the weekend, talking to different people about it and trying to figure out where the gulf was between the fact that I could recognize that it's well made without feeling as strongly about it as I did with Grease. Because Grease to me is like a 10 out of 10. Interviewed the studio at the time. I thought it was just this stunning little thing that they made. And Neva is just solid. It's a kind of, it's not quite a sophomore slump, but it is slightly disappointing, despite the fact that everything they've added to their formula, so combat obviously being the core thing here, you get a very basic sword attack as well as like a little jump. Eventually, you can use Neva as like a homing missile, which is really cool. And then your sword attacks eventually get infused with Neva, who kind of sprawls around you in like a cool little puff of magic. And then your sword gets stronger. Happy days. Feels incredible. Like it is for a studio that hasn't done combat before. It is very tight. It is very responsive and fun. I never really got bored of doing it. I do think that the challenge level on the bosses is maybe tweaked in the wrong direction at the moment because these are some struggle. Like they're fights you can struggle with, and it interrupts the momentum of the emotional experience. But other than that, really solid combat. The platforming continues to be great for anyone who hasn't played Grease as well. They do a very floaty jump. It's sort of like slowly falling. It's very Peach style, basically. So you have a fair amount of control over what's going on. It's very forgiving. This game also includes some really neat puzzles. Nothing that will blow you away, but just they get you from point A to B, give you something to do while you're kind of chewing on the emotional experience you're having with this. And Nomada Studios are like first in class for aesthetics and visuals. If you've seen anything from either of these games, you'll immediately understand. But it's very watercolored, it's very textured, it plays with silhouettes and vibrancy in some really interesting ways. It's just very, very well put together. Adam from WellPlayed.
Hello, Adam from WellPlayed here. So, on the aesthetics, one of the
Yes.
things I really liked about Grease was that it didn't ever stick to a color palette, like it was ever changing throughout kind of start to finish. Doesn't take you very long to finish the game, but you see
Yes.
a whole variety of color palettes throughout. Everything that I've seen from Neva so far, whether it be previews or trailers or whatnot, it sticks very much to kind of a singular color palette.
Yes.
It's lots of greens with a few little kind of reds and oranges thrown in. Does it venture very far out of that, or is it kind of it has its own aesthetic and it sticks to that?
A bit of both. So because of the seasonal structure of the game, it does allow for them to change the core sort of foresty landscape in different ways.
Sure.
And there is a pretty lengthy stretch in the middle of the game and then again at the end of the game where things get ratcheted up to 10. Like they really get experimental with it. And those were my favorite parts of the game by a mile. Very visually arresting stuff. I think returning to that base world over and over again, the one that was sort of seen in a lot of the marketing, it grounds this game in a way that Grease wasn't grounded, if that makes sense. Grease, you kind of felt like you were falling through a dream. This feels like you are in a world, even if it is a world largely of metaphor. There it is again.
Hey.
It still feels a bit more grounded, and I think a lot of that also comes back to like having an NPC companion with you this time, because Grease was a very solo experience. Having Neva there never works exactly as you'd expect based on the trailers, and that's never where I want to be at with a game like this. It's very cute, very charming animal creature that is probably going to go through exactly what you expect a cute, charming animal to go through in a Disney/Ghibli story, who has a young girl accompanying it. Mechanically, it also will always do exactly what you ask it to do. There's no Last Guardian kind of playfulness. There's nothing that really gives me the impression that this was like a creature I was sharing a space with, other than outside of it. It was a mechanic I was sharing the space with that was also really cute to look at. And that is, I understand why it's there that way. It just doesn't quite give me what I want emotionally from this kind of experience. I don't know. I don't want to sound negative on it because it's not a bad game by any stretch. I think this is remarkably well made. They're very good at what they do. And again, like what they've added to the formula is largely very successful. But I came away from it like going, I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to go. And then it went exactly that way. And that's fine. But I never knew how Grease was going to go. And I missed that sense of wonder, that sense of falling into something that I just didn't quite get out of this. Music is incredible as well, I guess.
Quicker on the raise,
Yes.
Adam.
Hello, Adam from WellPlayed again. I've got one quick question before, obviously, you've given kind of your main thoughts, but before you slap a score on it. So obviously you're a Nomada Studios fan. Would you prefer, and not to shoehorn a studio into only doing one kind of game, but if they were to go kind of back in the way of Greece or stick with what they've got with Neva and maybe expand on the combat and kind of refine this, where would you like them to go from here? Do you think they should go back to kind of a more, flowy platformer or stick with the combat?
No, I think the combat's good. I think it's a very successful choice that they've made here, and I think that with more time to refine it, they would be considered some of the best in game to do it. As far as I'm concerned. Again, this isn't a genre that I'm super familiar with. Like platforming combat isn't my thing.
Sure.
But to my controls, at least, it was very tight. It was very good. The problem with Neva is that it is just what it couches the rest of it in is the part I'm struggling with the most. It's just if you've seen a Ghibli film, like you kind of get this. If you've seen even a Disney film, you kind of get this. And Grease was a very adult story in a lot of ways. It didn't need to tell you it was an adult story, but it was one, and you could really invest yourself in it. And outside of the final 5 minutes of this game, where it finally makes a choice made for adults, I think everything else about this is like, yeah, I don't know. It's just very safe. It's very safe.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. What big number are you slapping on this bad boy?
A safe 8.
Okay.
It's not a bad game. It's just because it's not what I wanted doesn't make it bad. But I do think that the disappointment that I feel with it is not going to just be mine. So
I certainly think for my tastes, I'm going to really love this game. And
I think so too.
I hope that I'm right about that. But yeah, good insights though.
Thank you.
Lovely. Good stuff. All right. I have been playing Until Dawn, the remake. Let's quickly talk about that. So has everyone here played Until Dawn?
Yes.
Yeah. What do we all think of Until Dawn when it first came out in 2015, or whenever you played it?
Oh, Jesus.
Ooh.
Nathan's
really?
getting spicy.
Thumbs down. Shit out.
He says,
do you want to expand on that, Nathan?
Yeah, I kind of don't want him to.
Agonizingly slow that it didn't maintain a whole lot of tension on me for a game that I was expecting to have a bit of spooky dookiness to it. I was just so fucking frustrated that my characters would walk like they've got, like bricks in their shoes. And it didn't really add, so much of my experience in that game, the tension was taken out of it because I was struggling with like the controls and the camera. So I just constantly got taken out of the experience. Whereas I talked to everyone else and, it was frightening, intense, and, exciting. I'm like, I wish I had that experience.
Did you play it by yourself or with
I played it
April?
with April. Well, that's how we like to play those kinds of games.
Fair.
We elevate
Very
each
fair.
other's enjoyment. And she definitely enjoyed it a lot more than me. So it was just me.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
James, how'd you feel?
Fine. Like I thought it was fine. I didn't have a bad time with it. Didn't have a memorable time either. I think it was a cool thing that kicked off a cool genre for them, and I'm always happy to see video games trying something. So
yeah. Well, I gave the original an 8 back in 2015, just for context. I quite enjoyed it, kind of with Nathan, but not with Nathan. I did find it a little bit tense, but didn't find it frightening. So I did find a lot of those moments to be quite tense. I think that
There's
was
one
also
or two good performances in there too. Like their motion capture technology is pretty cool.
Yeah, so this game though feels odd. So this whole release feels strange, right? So I do think that this is Supermassive's best version of this formula. I don't think they've quite hit the heights personally. I think The Quarry comes close, but doesn't quite hit the same for me. And one of the Dark Pictures games is I can't remember. It's either the third or the fourth one, or maybe both.
You really like the third one.
Yeah.
Of course, the casting of Frank Stone.
The casting of Frank Stone, not so much. Anyway, so this is if you don't know what Until Dawn is, this is the interactive kind of choose your own adventure, branching narrative horror game that you see 8 teenagers who go up to a place called Blackwood Pines Mountain, and the story kind of starts off. You get a very, very quick prologue where 2 people kind of disappear. So it's two members of this friend group kind of disappear. And then 12 months later, they kind of go back to this mountain to kind of have a reunion because, they'd want us to kind of come and celebrate, the 12-month anniversary of their disappearance in the same spooky area. But
Ridiculous.
of course, things kind of go a bit cray-cray and, people start to, we've got to use teenage lingo, or is that not what do I need my hard?
Please continue. I'm loving
Hella.
it.
Hella.
Don't people at your work call you a boomer?
Oh, fuck up.
Get that gritty.
Anyway, so yes, things go a bit wild, and then people start to potentially die. There's a threat on out in the forest and the wilderness, and you kind of got to make some choices and hit a bunch of QTEs to kind of make it through the night. So at various points of the game, the story will kind of jump between these 8 different characters, and obviously your choices will impact what plays out, and of course who lives and who dies. Now, this, I don't think PlayStation's actually put a label on this. I don't think they've actually said that it's a remake. They've, again, a bit like Part 1, Last of Us Part 1, they said it's like a rebuild. It's like rebuilt for the PS5. So
Because we need another term for these.
yeah, it's a rebuild. But so what they
Then we'll get
have
a pro
done,
rebuild later.
that's it. They've they have used Unreal 5 for this, but they have used a lot of all of the existing assets for this. It's priced at $109. You can still buy the original PS4 game. So sorry, when I say it's priced at $109, that is obviously PlayStation Store pricing and probably EB Games pricing. But you can still buy the original PS4 version, excuse me, for $25 on the PlayStation Store. There is no upgrade path for this game. So given that it's not like a remaster, because I think the new Horizon is a remaster. So as it's not being classified as a remaster, there is no upgrade path for this game. However, that to me is, that concept is fine. Applied to this game doesn't really make that much sense because all we've kind of really got here is a little bit of a graphical overhaul with Unreal 5. Some of the lighting and the atmospheric sort of stuff that goes on is really, really cool. I do think it looks very, very, very good. And then the like the models do look like they do look a lot better than the original. But we are approaching a 10-year anniversary of that game. But outside of that, there's really not much has changed. The other major change, and I'm glad that Nathan brought it up, is that the fixed camera system is essentially gone. So for the most part, this is an over-the-shoulder kind of your RE4 style experience now. There is still moments where you have a fixed camera, but for the most part, it is a third-person over-the-shoulder thing, which does give you a bit more freedom to explore your areas and kind of do that. But they haven't really fixed the movement, and they do still have the turning circle of trucks. Like there were moments where I was fighting, like I had to kind of do like
trying to get through doorways.
Correct. I had to try and like do circles to get through doorways. So movement here is still an issue. The other thing that they have done like a new or expanded. Do you have a question?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just can't. Well, I can see like the outline of your thumb in my OBS thing.
Oh yeah, I'm with you because of the boxing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
look, that's not important. What's important is I have a question. James from WellPlayed. So the fixed camera angle thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like removing that from memory, those fixed camera angles, like in the original Resident Evil, were used to elicit a particular feeling to a scene. And given that this is meant to be movie-like, it feels like removing deliberate camera angle choices in favor of a generic control scheme would fuck with that.
So what I've written in my review is it definitely comes at the expense of some of the tension that is built from those sequences where or the scenes where you can't, you can't explore, you can't turn around and see what's behind you or what's next to you or whatever it may be. But you do I think you get more immersion in the moment, if that makes sense. Like, because you can kind of explore and you get to kind of see more of the area. So there is that greater immersion in the world. But like I said, it does come at the expense of some of that tension, and maybe that cinematography, if you want to kind of call it that, that does come with that. I prefer the new way, but I haven't played the old way for a while. But playing through the new way with some of those fixed cameras, I did prefer to kind of have that kind of over the shoulder thing. It's kind of a bit like playing, even though they're completely different games, right? But playing the original RE2 versus the new RE2, right? It just, for me, it just feels like it just plays better, like, than the older. Obviously, completely different games, but those, but that's just my personal take on that camera system. There is some new content, so you do get like an expanded prologue, which gives you a bit more context and a bit more insight into what happens in those initial moments. There's some new scenes that play out sort of towards the end, which kind of hint what's happening with the future of this series. And there's some other areas that you get to explore, and there's some new collectibles. Outside of that, that's it. And they have tweaked some of the soundtracks. So I think they've put in some modern tracks and removed some of the older tracks. Is what I'm getting at. Is what I've heard, but there's no Wind Waker, so I wouldn't know. But the other thing the one good thing that they have done is they have, because it's a PlayStation game, there's a lot of some good accessibility options in this game. So one thing that I do think is quite neat is, remember the mechanic with the light bar where you had to kind of hold it still to kind of. I was
going to ask about that.
Yeah, so that is still there. It feels much easier this time, right?
Does it still have the little light thing though?
It's got like a little
controller.
No, it's got like a little like the same thing applies, but it's like you have to hold it still, and if you move the little bar thing goes out of the
so
meter.
Just give you a level meter now.
Yeah, correct. So it's basically that. But in the accessibility options, you can actually turn them off.
Yeah,
where you
cool.
So you can do that, and there's other things. So you can actually play around with the QTE settings as well. So you can make it that it's just the one button all the time. So and sort of other stuff like that. What I will say with the QTEs, and I wrote this in my original reviews, that towards the end of the game, when you have those moments where you're pushing like 3 or 4 buttons, it's always the same pattern: square, triangle, circle, square. And I did find that happen quite a bit
baby
here
mode
as well.
For baby Zach.
Simon.
Give me some throw it up a bit, spice it up. There are like 3 or 4 different moments where it was like I knew like the button that was coming. Anna, absolutely disaster, right? We were playing it and she would commentate the buttons.
Oh boy.
Fucking triangle would appear. Square, circle. It'd be a fucking triangle or something. So I've had to like
QTEs for her.
I had to try and block out the that. But anyway, yeah.
Why wouldn't you just give her the controller? That's such a
Mate, because they'd all fucking die, and she wanted them all to survive. I did kill a couple. Adam from WellPlayed.
Fair enough.
How many survived? That was my question.
Master of QTE, Zach Jackson.
6.
6 out of 8.
This actually, I'm glad that you asked. This is actually one of my small little gripes in this game, is that there are some deaths here that aren't overly signposted.
Yes, correct.
And feel
absolutely.
And feel a bit unfair.
They feel a bit cheap.
Correct. So there was one moment where I don't quite remember but it was like run or hide or whatever it was, right? And it's like
toss a coin, right?
But this is when you have 2 characters, and your decision as the playable character ends up getting the second character killed. And it's like, come on, man. Like,
that's something that they fixed a little bit later in the piece. Like the quarry, it's far easier to understand what your actions are going to do.
Correct.
Whereas Until Dawn, they had the little butterfly thing, and you
Yeah.
immediately you're like,
does
oh
this
well, I'm
mean?
fucked.
What you can do in this game, for those who haven't played it, is that there are totems that you can find in the world, and they will give you like a little insight, small little look at a potential event that can
They're
happen.
pretty
And there's
abstract, though, aren't they?
Yeah,
uh,
sometimes they're like purposefully misleading because I got screwed by one of those.
well,
I feel like I did too.
they're all labeled though. So you got like death, guidance,
Lies.
Yeah.
and a bunch of other ones, right? So
Deception.
yeah, like we often went back and looked at a couple that were like, okay, there's obviously a moment here that this is linked to, kind of thing. Anyway, I don't want to go on about it because it's it's a 9-year-old game, but for $109, you don't need to replay this game if you're not anything other than a mega fan. If Until Dawn's your favorite game or one of your favorite games, I would recommend playing this again and paying the $109 because you'll probably get a lot of value out of it. This game's always had good replayability. However, I do think that this remake is a very, very generous term, and I feel like it is nothing but a bit of a cash grab. And the only reason why this game exists, I think, is to tie in with a movie that is fuck knows when coming out, and obviously to kind of fatten the PS5 game catalog at the moment because there's kind of not much going on. However, if this is your first time playing it and you are into these kinds of games, I would recommend it, but I do think you got to be aware of that cost. It's something that I would be buying from maybe like an EB Games where you can kind of return it on the off chance that you don't kind of jive with it, or like a Amazon or a JB, which is I think like 89. But yeah, still like a very, very solid game, and I enjoyed my time, and I gave it a 7. Any questions? About 80 hours, I think, is about how I played, about the time frame.
Did Supermassive do this remake?
No, good question. So Ballistic Moon is the dev that did this, which is actually an offshoot of a bunch of Supermassive devs.
Right.
As mentioned in the review, quite sad, before this game even released, they actually suffered a bunch of layoffs. So I think the studio still exists because they're doing some patching work on it, but I think it's obviously it might be like a bit of a skeleton crew at this stage.
Right.
I don't want us to get caught up in this because I feel like we fucking talk about it every week. But like I could see, because you and I had a heated debate about The Last of Us Part 1 and how I didn't think that was necessary. But you were like, no, but the TV show's coming out. You want the attention to be on the prettier product. And granted, I could understand that. I didn't agree with it, but I could understand it from a business perspective. This doesn't make sense from a business perspective because we've heard nothing about the movie, and unless it comes out in the next like month or so, this is just going to be kind of forgotten. And I also don't see even if it's side by side, right? Last of Us Part 1, if you put those side by side, even though my memory was telling me the game looks amazing, you very much want to go one way. Put these side by side. One's $110. One is, if you go to a bargain bin at EB or JB, probably $15. It's just not. It's not enough. This is a fucking ridiculous product.
Yeah, the thing with that, I think, is that Last of Us is like a prestige title for PlayStation. Had that
absolutely
very successful TV show. Obviously, getting season 2, has a second game. Blah blah blah. But that was a PS3 game, right? So this game here, the PS4 version of Until Dawn, is compatible. You can play that on your PS5, and there is actually, from memory, there's a 60 FPS or patch for that. I didn't really have any issues technically with this game. I don't know if I got lucky or like if a patch dropped after kind of all the issues were there, but I didn't really have any bugs. It didn't seem like it was running chugged at all. I've read that it runs at 30. My little tiny brain can't tell the difference with a game like Until Dawn, right? So, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we moved away from PlayStation doing live service games to then just get remasters and remakes and rebuilds. Fucking disgusting. So like, yeah, it seems like we're kind of doomed if we,
And
damned if we do, damned if we don't.
hmm Adam, to your point as well, like there was that video going around of these two side by side, and like I genuinely think this looks inferior in a lot of
I
ways.
agree.
Not
Interesting.
fidelity wise, but I think lighting, art direction, vibe
100%.
is not there in this one the way that it was before.
I think
I
it
really-
stripped its character. It reminds me
Yes.
of the remake or whatever of Silent Hill 2 that they did, and they got rid of all the fog. It was like,
right, yeah.
now that not the recent one, it was back on, I don't know, PS3
wow,
or
okay.
PS2 or something. But they got rid of the
Mhm.
fog because, like, it's a well-known
It was
thing.
a technical
only reason
limitation, and
the fog was there to kind of reel in your field of view. And they
Mhm.
got rid of it because they could, but didn't think about if they should, because it was the only thing building tension. I agree. Gives me the same vibes here, where I looked at them side by side. And it's like, yeah, that room's way better lit. Now I can see everything. Cheers. Like it
Mhm.
just, something about it just doesn't look right to me. I've watched like a 20, 30-minute playthrough, and it just, I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah, the direction is off. For me, at
Mm.
least.
I wonder if that's something we're broadly seeing with UE5 at the moment. When you look at like that Halo footage they released as well, that looked very shiny and
It's all the same.
lacking art direction in a weird way.
Yep. We
yeah.
had this conversation like a couple months ago about everything looks great on Unreal Engine 5. And that's almost a problem because it's
Mhm.
like, yes, it looks great. Does it play great? Does it have anything else? And it's the same thing here. It's like, yes, it looks great, but it doesn't really have a soul because it looks so polished.
Mhm.
Mm.
Anyway, Until
Mm.
Dawn, eh?
Well, speaking of Silent Hill 2 remakes,
Oh, time for our loose 60.
No,
James-
it's all good. So yeah, this code came to us quite late, and then because of PAX again, time, whatever. It's fine. I'm not quite ready to render a verdict yet. I'll just briefly go over the fact that I think that here on this podcast and broadly on the internet, nobody was expecting Bloober Team to do well with this because it's Bloober Team. From what I've played so far, which is I'm about halfway through the experience, it is very, very well constructed. It is excellent vibes, phenomenal voice work, some very fun stylistic choices that they've made. Yeah, I'm enjoying myself, I guess is the headline, right? Like, and if noted Bloober hater James can have a good time with this, it means you're probably going to have a great time with this, right? So far I am thinking about this game when I'm not playing it. I am very excited to get back to it and finish it and kind of like render a bit of a verdict and kind of see where I land on some stuff, because there's some stuff to talk about with this game. You know, the switch to the third person over the shoulder camera, the sort of retooled combat. There's some choices in here that dramatically change the experience of Silent Hill 2 in ways that I think make it much more approachable and modern and less Silent Hill 2-y. Less immediately identifiable as something other than a third-person action horror game. Mileage is going to vary on that, and I'm still not sure where my mileage is going to land on how that transition has been made here. But yeah, like it's not a disaster, I guess, is the headline.
Nice. All right. Well, we look forward to that. Let's go to some shout outs, shall we? Got one from Jade, a new writer on the team here. She has reviewed Edge of Sanity. She says, despite the quirks, Edge of Sanity is a challenging and enjoyable Cthulhu-inspired eldritch horror survival game, thanks to its well-made 2D design and addictive resource management systems. 7 out of 10 for that one. And big old Marky Mark, he says, he reviews Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and he writes, or from what I thought it said sparkling, and I was like, that doesn't look right. I think it was the exclamation point before the second word, which is kind of, anyway. As Dragon Ball games go, Sparking Zero stands as one of the better translations of what it feels like to be a superpowered hero, Goku or otherwise. It's not for everyone, but with a great set of modes and a roster of characters, fans should find plenty to enjoy. 8 little biscuits out of 10.
Do you ever watch Dragon Ball Z, mate?
Fuck,
Zach
no.
Jackson? No?
No. It's too busy fucking
Chinese
doing
cartoons
man
for you?
shit.
You'd
Oh,
love
right.
Piccolo from the early days when he was just a
He actually
macho
would.
prick.
You would love
would.
Piccolo.
I was
You'd
too
vibe
busy.
What was that
Piccolo.
kid? He's like, no cheese TV for me. I'm waiting for Rex Hunt's Fishing Adventures to come on.
Mate,
That's some real man shit.
I was playing guitar, get my fucking slutty forearms
Oh,
going. You know what I mean?
fuck yeah. Rex, you kiss that trout and throw it away.
Holy fuck. That
Yibbity
was
yabbida.
amazing.
Yibbity yabbida.
Or whatever he says.
Oh,
All right. So we had a pretty busy weekend. We went to PAX Oz 2024. How are we feeling post PAX? We got post PAX sadness.
I had a gnarly
little bit.
cough for like two days, but I think I'm okay now.
Any
Hmm.
any PAX diseases?
Did anyone vomit?
Not this
No.
year.
Ah, improvement, guys. Clean run.
Actually, I
we're
woke up
growing as people.
surprisingly all right.
For you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I had breakfast with him the next morning, and he was pretty spry.
What time was breakfast?
Pretty early. 9?
Yeah, like 8:30.
That's not
8:39.
bad.
Yeah.
No. I stayed in bed until like 9:30. I went back to the show hall. I thought I was gonna die. And then I started drinking again. So I fixed it.
Kick-ons.
Yeah.
Best way to deal with it.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Very good. All right. What do we think of PAX this year? What do we think? Oh, sorry. Where do we think PAX is at, James?
I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like you can't help but feel as if the kind of broader industry troubles have maybe leaked into that room a little bit. I don't imagine for the average consumer by any stretch. I mean, this is still very much a consumer show. They had plenty to do. It was very loud. That's all great. But I think that if you're paying a little bit of attention, if you're talking to people, if you're overhearing things, I don't know. The vibe was interesting this year. Always cool to see a lot of indies come out, of course. But yeah, I don't know. It felt odd to do like a big celebration of video games while most people are unemployed or on their way there. So
Nathan?
Yeah. It's unclear to me what the main draw or draws are for PAX now. Like you could say it would be the panels or the tabletop hall or the video games, and all of them were great, I think. But I'm not quite sure which one is now supposed to be the pull. I think I have learned that Friday is the winner for me / us. It's just by and large, it's just a little quiet. Everyone's a little bit more energized, and it's genuinely a enjoyable day where you can kind of get your hands on what you want to get done. That probably sounds redundant, but that really hit home for me this year. It was a very good Friday for us.
It was.
Adam from WellPlayed, thoughts on PAX?
Hello, Adam from WellPlayed here. Yeah, I think it's important, James kind of touched on it, for us to zoom out a little bit because we engage with PAX in a very specific way, being media.
Correct.
I think for the general PAX goer, it is still a very exciting weekend. And you can just see that in kind of how people are engaging with it. They're, happy to line up for 20 minutes to get hands on with something that, we smacked out during media hour. And we go round and round and round that massive exhibition center, which is huge. I got like 13,000 steps in on the Saturday. Ridiculous. Just kind of going over things that we've seen a few times now because we're just doing laps. That's not how the general consumer is doing it. They kind of spend their time in the indie section. They see everything they want to see. That might take an hour, might take a couple hours, make their way through. So I think, yes, for us, there are things, and again, we go every year. We're seeing the same indie games. We're seeing a lot of the same board games, a lot of the same people going there year after year. That's not how a lot of people do it. It might be they go every other year, every couple of years, whatever. So yeah, maybe for us, it's kind of at a bit of a lull. I still had a really great weekend, all in all. But yeah, I would hope for the consumer that they're still enjoying it. And from what I could tell, most people were.
I'm going to disagree. I think it was flat.
Of course you would.
I think it's flat. I think
Here comes authentic consumer Zach Jackson.
I
Tell
think
us how
as
you really
Doc,
feel.
with his
Well, I
Dr.
think-
Squatch.
I think that's it. I've cleaned up. I've scrubbed up. I'm ready to
A
deliver.
hygienic consumer.
Hey. Well, mate, if Dr. Squatch should have had a booth at PAX, they would have fucking sold.
No,
Lots.
they wouldn't.
No, probably not.
You do not want to put Sydney Sweeney in that hole.
No, she doesn't want to be in that hole either.
No, no. That's
anyway.
a dangerous combination.
Less about Sydney Sweeney and more about my thoughts on PAX. But no, I think
Zachy Sweeney.
I think what the fuck am I going to say? Yeah, so I thought it was a bit flat. I think if you're paying $180 and if you're predominantly into games, I think the value isn't quite there. I think it's also, it really does sum up not the state of the Australian games market, but this year we had literally no big unannounced game. You know, there was no PlayStation again. There was no Xbox again. There was no Nintendo in like any real kind of way.
Yeah, whereas last year they did. It was an odd absence.
Ubisoft did turn up, and obviously they had that recent delay of Shadows, which would have been there, which is good. You know, that's a big game that you come to play. But you think about Gamescom, you think about PAX West, PAX East, PAX whatever the fuck PAX is over there. Like there's all these big games, or these big companies are attending these conferences, and we get fucking scraps. Like we get nothing here. And I feel like this is not to shit on the indies, but I think a lot of casual gamers or just general consumers don't care that much. They're not there to play fucking Aussie Bogan heroes, you know what I mean? Like they're here to play Assassin's Creed Shadows or Avowed or Indiana Jones, to use a couple of upcoming Xbox games, for example, right? Like, yeah, I think it's sad that these big companies are ignoring really this event here, because obviously we've been going for how long? I don't, but they used to turn up and have a pretty big presence, right? But
yes.
It's weird because Ubisoft still had a huge presence. Like they had a massive chunk of the floor carved out to play Prince of Persia. And it's like I loved that game, but I played it at PAX last year before it came out. Then it came out, then it got discounted, and now it's back at PAX again for you to line up for 20 minutes to play on the show floor. Like,
yeah, if you haven't played it by now, you're not playing it at PAX for the first time. It's just it's a curio.
The one thing, they did have Sonic. I can never remember the fucking whole name of the game. The Sonic Dark Generations.
Sonic Cross Shadows. Generations.
And they did have Metaphor ReFantazio.
Oh, was that playable on the floor? Was it? Oh, I didn't
it
know.
was. Yeah, it came out the day PAX started as well. So that was that's a cute little thing.
Yeah, so I'll give them that because there's obviously a lot of people that are going that are probably keen.
There is also a 20-hour demo of that game available everywhere, but yes.
There is also that. I forgot about that. Anyway, so yeah, that was my kind of thoughts. I just felt it just didn't have the buzz. It's lacking a bit of glitz and glam, from some big companies. But yeah, like kind of what you did say, James, it does kind of tie into that whole thing where people losing their jobs. It's obviously a bit of a down year for the industry, but other than that, I thought indies were a good showing. But again, there was just, and we'll probably talk about this. There was no like it game. You know what I mean? Like there was no. What's the it game?
So, last year, Rose and Locket, I think kind of everyone that touched that thing came away being like, holy shit, like this is the game that you come to PAX to see. And I didn't play anything this year that made me that excited, unfortunately. And I mean, if anything, there was a couple of games on that show floor that were too early, I would say. And I imagine if you are a kid or someone who's not tuned into the gaming sphere the way that we are and doesn't have the sympathy and the understanding for that development process, if you paid to get into PAX and then they put a controller in your hand and you play some of the things that we played there, I don't know how you'd feel.
Yeah, it's going to be polarizing for both parties.
Yes.
Maybe even quite heavily for the developer.
And I do think and this is not meant to be a slight on the games themselves, but I do feel like the indie showcase itself, the lineup was a bit weak this year. Again, I didn't feel that pull of anything in particular. Maybe, Adam, you probably enjoyed the one that you played, but outside of that one game, and then basically the best stuff that I thought was there was stuff that we'd already played last year. So Euros and Lockets, you had Denari in the New Zealand section. Footy Bash was fun again. That was a great little booth. The Drifter was also there. I didn't go and play the Drifter, but it was there, right? So, Box Night. But this is shit we've seen, and it was great to have a chat with them and kind of get an idea of where they've kind of been and that. But there's some games that we've seen there for the past 3-4 years, like Primordials. Again, it's there, right? Anyway, let's talk about the stuff.
That's probably the flip side, where us as media probably have a better time with games that are there again. Whereas, we get to chat with the devs and see, what's progress, how's the team doing, blah, 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 blah. We see the differences that they've made. If you're a general consumer and you are seeing Primordial Legends Combat Wombat for the third or maybe fourth time, I think fourth time at PAX.
I think it's third. I think it's third, but
and you might be wrong. Who knows? You would definitely have that moment of, I have already played this 2 or 3 times. Why is it still here? So yeah, that's a tricky one.
I just think No, you go.
I was just going to say there's a whole other thing that we won't get into about South by Southwest, because there's been some omissions. I know there's folks that normally would have a PAX presence that have gone, we're not going to have a PAX presence because of South by Southwest, but we won't get into that. It's just there are logistical concerns.
Well, that is a good thing, though.
Doing it the very next day is kind of cannibalizing a scene that was already established in a way that I find kind of malicious. Allegedly,
I think there could be something to that, James. I mean, as I said, I won't get into it tonight, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Makes you
think for the same space, and they are both for profit and licensed names, etc., etc.
It's important to think.
Anyway, let's talk about what we did play and did enjoy. So, who wants to? Adam, you want to kick us off? You haven't shared any.
I'd love to. I'll start off with what, for my money, was my game of show. Purely because these sort of games appeal to me in a massive way, like Untitled Goose Game, Donut County, Thank Goodness You're Here. Untitled Goose Game and Thank Goodness You're Here kind of being the 2 main kind of inspirations that I felt. It's a game called My Arms Are Longer Now, which I've got my little preview write-up thing on the website already. Essentially, you play as a really disgusting elongated arm that just kind of snakes its way through a Melbourne train, and is a complete kleptomaniac and just has a list of things to steal. So in the preview, it was you needed to steal a bike, which the cyclist was not too pleased about. A dog, the animation of the hand creeping along, shit it in your nightmares. It's awful in the best, funniest way possible. And then a briefcase, I don't know. So it is very Untitled Goose Game. Here's a little checklist of things to do. Go and do them. I took the really boring route. I just kind of crept under the chairs to avoid the ticket inspector. I then stood back and watched other people play it, and you can burst out of the window and climb back in. Or I think it was maybe Nathan, I'm not sure, someone else I was with played it, and they found a ticket, gave that to the ticket inspector, and he was like,
dude.
Yeah. And when you gave it to the ticket inspector, he was like, no worries, mate. Thanks. I'm glad we validated that you're on the train legally. And then he just left you alone. So there's going to be a bunch of different ways that you can approach these levels. It had a ridiculous amount of charm. It had really, really dry comedic voice acting, which I really liked as well. So yeah, it had a lot of charm, cool little aesthetic, and a gameplay loop that I'm there for, because I love games like Untitled Goose Game. So yeah, my game of show, absolutely loved it. Had a great time.
Question for you: is there a demo up on Steam now, or is it just?
There is. You can play the demo now on Steam, and it will be, I think, release is the first half of 2025 from memory. So you won't need to wait too long. I would suggest you play the demo though. It is pretty great.
Cool. Good stuff.
Hmm.
Nathan, you want to go give us one?
Cool thing. So I think probably my game of show, if I was to even categorize it, wouldn't even be anything I played. And that's fine. I got to watch you guys play some cool stuff and enjoy it vicariously. But I think a standout for me was a little Canberra studio joint called Ascending Inferno. So I had the pleasure of sort of hovering over Adam's shoulder while he braved this one. And it's a bizarre concept. So your character's younger brother is basically gone to hell and then finds his spirit effectively trapped into what is effectively a soccer ball or a ball or sphere, but just pretends it's a soccer ball. And then you're effectively, or I've got to stop saying effectively, but you're tasked with then getting out of these or navigating these 2D levels that'll have a bunch of pits and obstacles where you're not so much intent on moving yourself, brother, which is going to involve you kicking and headbutting and rebounding the surfaces and trying to navigate them over pretty precarious routes. Watching Adam do it was quite a sobering and empathetic experience because you could see him making progress through these, these vertical levels, and then soccer ball just bouncing off a wall, going through a hole, and then sending him back down 3 levels. So it's got that getting over it 2 steps, or rather, I think it's more like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right? Progress seemed very, very difficult. This is built for speedrunning. This is definitely built for a community that wants to see people push up against a high skill ceiling and really demonstrate what is a quite unusual control scheme by the looks of it. I can't remember. They said there was going to be 9 unique levels. It'll take about 15 to 20 hours for folks that aren't like really good at these skill-based games, the average punter. The environments are surreal. They're so detailed and layered quite nicely. There's a lot of neat animation going on. And a little Canberra studio of, I think, what they say their core team was 4 or 5. I think they ballooned out to about
roundabouts.
14 with contractors at one point, and it's their debut title. This looks way too good for a debut title. So Ascending Inferno comes out, I think, next week, October 28th.
28,
so,
yeah.
That's an exciting one for us to see for the first time. By the time you're hearing this, it'll be a week or so till it's out, and we'll get to see what it's like.
Nice work.
I think we all looked at it, didn't we? Were you there, James? Did you see it?
It's a very striking game. I think every time I
Very
walked past that
striking.
booth as well, there was quite a big crowd, which is always nice to see.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about it, actually, up on well-played.com.au, Christy did a wonderful interview with the developers and wrote about some of the concepts that they're
shit.
playing with and how they landed on that game. So, yeah.
It's a
That's
good little
funny.
read.
I didn't know that. I'm going to look that up. Thanks, Christy.
On you,
James.
Christy. Yeah.
Shouts to Christy.
I missed this the first 2 times I went there, and so I'm glad I showed up Sunday, no matter how hungover I was. The Rewinder 2.
Okay.
Does anyone have any frame of reference for this? Yeah. So it seems like
I do.
Great.
Sorry, that was it. I stopped and watched a few people play it on the Sunday as well. I didn't get hands on myself, but yes, it was one that I looked at.
I very briefly did, and then decided that I wanted to play the demo at home instead, which fortunately you can do on Steam. Highly recommend it. This is a pixel art horror game, sort of very much playing with Eastern mythology. You use a weird time travel mechanic to influence choices in the past to change things in the present. The first Rewinder was also a pixel horror game, but was more of like a puzzle adventure side scroller. This is full-on kind of open environments. You move around everything. There's combat now. It seems like they've really taken on the approach of like a sequel goes big or goes home, which is very cool to see. Very striking to look at. Very, very cool aesthetics. And it remains to be seen about obviously the rest of it, but it shows quite well. And the premise of engaging with time like that is quite fascinating. So yeah,
nice one. One of the ones I enjoyed was in the New Zealand section. It's called Burger Boys. I think
I knew he was going to do it.
We all either experienced it. I think James, you and I played it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is a food management kind of game. Not, I guess
Cool.
you'd have,
Sure.
yeah. So it was interesting chatting to the devs, like, because when they were kind of saying that they didn't want to do an Overwatch, so not Overwatch. What's the one I'm thinking of? Overcooked. They didn't want to do an Overcooked style game. They kind of wanted to make it about making food and, you know, the flavors and kind of the enjoyment that comes from that kind of process, right? So in this game, you are running a little burger truck, and you have all these different customers that come up to buy these burgers throughout the day, and you have a bunch of ingredients, and the requests will be quite vague, or they will be like they'll be literal. So there was one guy who was like, I want 5 layers of jalapenos on my burger. And so you make your burger with that. But some of them are a little bit different. So some of them might be, I want it with and I might be getting some of the terms mixed up, but it's like I want like a gluten-free bun, but it's quite saucy but also quite sweet, right? So you've kind of got to make a mix of these ingredients and these flavors, and there's like a little graph and stuff that you can use that kind of gives you an idea of the scale of this burger in terms of its flavors. And yeah, then you kind of get a star rating at the end of every burger, and you get the more stars, so the more cash, and then the more stars, the more cash, but the extra cash comes from the tips, so you get further tips, and then you kind of build up this rapport with this clientele. Yeah, and it was just about
War
making
with
these
the clientele.
Well, yeah,
there's
'cause-
a competing food van that comes along, so there'll be an antagonist element.
Yeah, and there is like a Blair. What's the word I'm thinking of? You can basically there'll be a grocer in the day where you can go and stock up and buy different ingredients and stuff like that. The other little hook with this game is that it's like, and I always fuck this word, and I should love it because
Anthropomorphic.
you knew exactly the word it was going to be.
ReFantazio.
That's it. So the main guy's got like French fries for hair kind of thing. It's kind of a bit wacky in its style. And then you've got these animals that are obviously human-like. There's some cats and there's fish kind of thing going on. Yeah, it's all pretty neat and cool. Super nice dev team. Really excited to be there. And Nathan, one of your observations of this game is just how clean the UI was.
This looks remarkably like a very modern auxiliary of something like the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney game. It's very bright, vivid, colourful art. All the text interfaces and everything are laid out super clean and readable. They think they told us it's about 6 months into development, but it looks UX wise like already like ready to ship professional product. So that's a big positive, big pro for them.
Yeah. The other cool thing is they want you to kind of make these recipes and then you can actually share them in real life kind of thing. So you can actually, which is quite neat.
James, will you be attempting your recipe in real life, mate, when that fish man told you that he was thirsty?
So here's the thing, right? This is a game built around building up meters of like, what was it, like juicy, salty, sweet, whatever. It's got like the kind of Pokemon IV chart that you can attach to your burgers and see what you've done with it. It gets in there. Anyway, the point is, this guy comes up, he says, I don't want food, but I need a drink. I'm parched. I need some sort of moisture.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, let's
like a fish out of water right now.
He's a fish out of water, exactly. So let's pick the wettest things on the menu and serve it to this man.
Yes,
now, it's not my fault that the highest wet rating was, layers of tomato and mayonnaise. And then you just serve that because it had a really high wet rating. And he said no. And everyone laughed at me. So I don't know.
Look, to be fair, I gave him I think I just gave him sauce. I think I gave him a napkin with a whole bunch of different sauce. So I do wonder, like, what happens, because there's obviously an option to say no. Like, so we neither of us actually chose the option.
Because they don't turn customers away, not in this economy.
Well, but you can't make the fish wet, if you know what I mean.
Joke's on
Just
you,
slap some
boys. You did
tomato on it.
just you. They also
Yeah,
sold
Mitch
bottles of
Shapiro.
water, but none of you'd thought to think in the box. You were all thinking
I
out.
saw no bottles of water in any
No,
menu.
Nah, there was
anywhere.
no water. There was
no,
no water.
they don't
Yeah,
sell
All
drinks.
right, all right.
your abomination was fair.
Gaslight me.
No blue heavens. Anyway, Adam, what else did you
What
play?
if-
No.
Never
Okay.
mind.
No.
Nope.
We've got to move forward. Save it for another time.
Oh, we've
But-
got to move forward now.
Shut up.
Have to.
All right, guys,
Adam?
we're about to miss our tight 90.
We have to. We only spent 20 minutes on Until Dawn. A very quick one. I played a little roguelike called Dark Umbra, which was kind of what you would expect from a roguelike side scroller. I think there were 6 or 7 different characters that you could choose from. Each had a different ability. I decided to play as the sick as fuck rat man that had like a quick dash that would do damage to anything that you went through. Combat was simple but pretty tight. It had a cool pixel aesthetic, but bearing the lead, you get to the boss fight and the music kicks in and it slaps every ass in the building. The soundtrack to this game is fucking phenomenal. I think I was saying that to the dev at the same time that James took his headset off while playing it, and he turned and was like, "Holy shit, that music was awesome!" So you could tell that it was kind of a sentiment shared by both of us. And the kind of exciting thing is it will be co-op up to 8 players, which is just absolutely absurd to get 8 people all in that sort of game at once. But yeah, it's still early doors, but it's showing a lot of promise, and I'm keen to see a little bit more from them.
It's also got that like Vampire Survivor kind of
Yes.
repeated run thing where you can pick up random drops and then you can only hold an X amount of money, X amount of them at the time. But like it's very good. I was quite impressed by this.
Yeah, I
That's
like that a lot.
enjoyable.
It's got permanent upgrades. You can go to like a
Mm.
town. We didn't see any of this, but you can go to a town and do permanent upgrades with things that you find out in the world. But I do think it's going to be getting a demo during Steam Next Fest.
There's a demo up now.
So there's a demo up
Hey.
now. Okay, cool. There you go.
Well,
so
hang on,
definitely check that one out as well.
No, there is not. I lied.
A demo during Steam Next Fest. So
Hang on, sorry.
check it out once
There is a demo.
Pick a
because-
fucking lane, mate.
Well, no, because sorry, there's 2 different listings on Steam. Okay, no, there is not. That's very misleading. Maybe it is coming.
There's
then.
going to be a demo
We're gonna
up
crack
during
this case
Steam's Next
wide open.
Fest.
Yep. Let's go
Fucking
with that.
hell.
It's actually launching in early access. For those wondering.
There you go.
I was wondering about the demo, but yeah.
During Steam
Well,
Next
don't have a
Fest.
fucking listing on Steam that says Dark Umbra demo. Clowns, go juggle in the street.
Super quick. I played a little game called Dungeons and Dining Tables. This was kind of
Yeah.
a Zelda-like meets a Sims Animal Crossing-like, where you venture out into like small open zone environments as a cute little axolotl that you can customize its color and name and gender, I believe. And then you do like some very basic attacks. Fight a bunch of goblin or wizard type creatures, and you pick up boxes while you're out there. Those boxes then get shipped back to home. You go back to the village. Sometimes some of the things that you fought out in the world now become villages because you've defeated them. And everything you open up in front of your house, like loot boxes, and you get like comfy couch, comfy bed, table with flowers on it. And all of these things in turn give you boosts and upgrades to your combat abilities while also being able to manipulate them in a Sims type setting. It has a lot going on, especially for something that started as a student project. I was having a lovely chat with the devs. They're barely out of school. This wasn't meant to be a full-time thing for them, but the job market is fucked. And so this is what they've landed on. And I love that for them. Go do your own thing. This is excellent. Very, very cute so far.
Sounded very
This is so
satisfying.
It's massively outside of my wheelhouse, but I walked past it a few times and it definitely looks like it's going to appeal to like that crowd. So yeah, it looks
The
really
C
cool.
word.
Yeah, we won't say
Fuck,
it
you
here,
called me?
obviously. We'd,
Whoa.
we'd have to censor it for
We would.
know.
We would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool name though. Nathan, you got a anything?
In the interest of time, I'll keep it brief. Not sure if it's necessarily one that you got to like keep on your wish list or anything, but it's a cool little concept. Squat Ops. You may have seen our little short on YouTube. It's blowing up big numbers. Me, big star, Nathan Hennessy.
Big squats.
big squats, WellPlayed's big squats. So what this is in the style of the original Metal Gear Solid, so isometric, set on your kind of blue-grey island, Mr. Sneaky Boy himself. I love that this is set on, rather than Metal Gear Solid's Shadow Moses is set on Abraham Island, which I told everyone repeatedly. No one found it as funny as I did, but I found it funny.
I told Kieran and he blank faced me. So
yeah, I got a few blank faces, and that's okay. I'm mature enough to accept that. This uses the ring fit system, so it's going to have you strap a best controller ever made Joy-Con around your thigh, as well as hold one in your hand, and then you are going to proceed to time squats in accordance with what the movements are of the enemies on screen. So you've got a set path, there is a set route. You don't get to choose which way you're going, but you're going to wait for opportune moments to dash along that path between crates and boxes, making sure that none of the enemies on Abraham Island catch you. And if they do catch you and you need to move a little bit faster to escape them apprehending you or just simply shooting you down, you can jump. Jumping in real life gives you 3 steps of movement as opposed to a squat, which gives you 2. So if you get, if you alert them, the enemies, and you get into a bit of a panic, it's great because in the middle of the show floor, you just get to do this weird kind of non-committal half squat jump that's kind of like a very crouched star jump situation. You're not really sure if you're going up or going down, and your character kind of gets a little bit confused as well, because if you're me, you forget that you're meant to time it, and then it's not really timing properly because there's a rhythm aspect to it. And then you got a little endurance meter as green circle, like out of Breath of the Wild. And if you do too many squat jumping up and down, kind of weird arsing around, runs out of stamina, and you just stand there for a while. But if you stand there for too long, or rather hold a squat, then you go into a little barrel rather than a cardboard box. It's a cool concept. I wouldn't buy it, but wasn't that fun to talk about, guys?
Thanks for keeping it brief.
You should see Nathan's quads now. Dude is absolutely yoked from the waist down.
You wouldn't believe it. I felt no delayed onset muscle soreness. I just went through the rest of PAX weekend feeling like an absolute Chad.
What a unit.
Speaking of units, the last game that I will talk about is Frog Rain. A little pixel art, kind of cool, medieval-y, kind of, not medieval, but what's the, I guess like a medieval frog. God, I can't even talk. Medieval setting, and it's like a little platformy thing where you use your tongue to kind of punch enemies and move objects and latch onto other stuff in the world. In this demo, you had to rescue like 5 frogs, I think, from the area. Looks very, very cool. There's it's quite a polished little showing of this, I thought. Yeah, looked quite neat, and there's a little bit of combat in there as well. James, you also had a dabble.
I did a very short dabble. I died rather quickly. Again, these games are not my forte, but very cool from what I saw. Very polished is the word I would use for it. Like, they've really landed on an art direction here that looks really, really excellent. The core concept of using your tongue to like simultaneously do combat and traverse is just great. That's just fun. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this builds out into a full experience for sure.
On the topic of that, let's quickly go to a little post-PAX chat about games. This game, I think, is a very, very good example of an ideal best showing of a game at PAX. This demo was like 7 minutes long at most. Like, at most 10 if you're really shit, but like at most, it was like 7 minutes. Other demos on the show floor were ballooning. They were like, you're looking at 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe. And then some games which did have shorter demos kind of didn't demo that well, right? Because they're probably not ideal for such a short little showing, right? So there was one game, and I won't name it, but it was like a city builder. And by the time I had all my head kind of wrapped around the tutorial basics, the demo time was kind of up. What do you guys think is, because I guess, some different games will have different lengths. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to summarize this perfectly by saying, yes, 7 minutes is ideal. And obviously, you probably want to tutorialize during that demo. Denari was probably twice as long as what it should have been, simply because a great demo, it takes pains to make sure it gently tutorializes you into its essentials before it gives you a nice little slice of when it all pops off. Goodness gracious, it would be dreadful for devs having to try and get that perfect demo in that perfect 7-minute window. I want to show so much in such a little time.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, it's a good concept. I think the idea of like a more polished, specifically designed vertical slice for a public demo is a really cool idea. And I imagine with more resources, everyone there probably would have wanted to do the best they possibly could. Like I do wonder if it's just a collision of like how much time and resources you have. I mean, some of these studios are tiny and it's not their jobs. Like this is something they do when they get home from work kind of thing. And I imagine taking time out of already being stressed about developing the game to develop specifically for PAX would be a problem. At the same time, I think to go and to do a bad showing is not a good thing, obviously. And I wonder if, as an organization, PAX should play a more active role in curation and assistance with this stuff, because sometimes it feels as if these devs are kind of out on a limb on their own on that show floor. And yeah, I don't know. Messy.
Yeah, thrown to the
Yeah.
wolves.
Well, I think
I-
that
I
last
think-
bit would come from the funding body. I don't think that would be a PAX thing personally. James, not James. Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that it would be great curation wise for there to be maybe like a soft cap on how long a demo could be. I will say that a few developers had, because like you said, there's only so much time, there's only so much money and effort that you can put into these things when you're sometimes literally one person working on it in, the 3 hours that you have after work. But there were a few booths that had like just a little whiteboard that gave you the genre of the game and then the expected time to play the demo. That should be standard across every booth in the building. Like just give super, super brief summary so you can just shoot your eyes at it and see how much time you would need to devote to it. So that way you can decide whether to come back to it or you can, stay there and wait. So perfect world, they would be curated, but in lieu of that, just give us a decent idea as to what we're looking at.
I do think that's also why a game like Footy Bash, for example, does demo quite well at an event.
Yes.
Oh, for
like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 minutes, you're in and out. Like
They
that's
also take pains to give you a quick verbal demo of what the controls in that are. I don't know if that's just us, but every time, including last year, whenever I picked up that controller, I get a quick spiel. This is what your 4 buttons do. This is what direction you're facing. Go and have fun. They don't need to tutorialize that. That's great. Off they can, jump straight in.
All right. James, you want to quickly just, what are we thinking for PAX, for the future of PAX next year? What are we hoping to see? I mean, I guess for me, probably the opposite of what I spoke about. Just a bigger presence, just a bigger, like a bigger event. Like show us that this event means something to these big companies, right? Like that these consumers that you're happy to take money from.
Agreed. I mean, look, a lot of this is kind of old man on porch yelling, but if I'd paid that much to walk into a massive hall like that and saw influencers I'd never heard of playing dodgeball taking up a gigantic slab of that show floor, I would go, "What's going on here?" I think to me, what I want PAX to be versus what PAX probably needs to be profitable are probably very different things. But I do feel as if the shrinking indie presence and the less curated indie presence is a bad sign. I don't want this to just be pure consumer slop show. But if that is how they keep the lights on, I guess sure. Yeah. I do want, like you said, big studios come back, big publishers show up, do something. Like didn't they have like a switch under a lock and key before that thing was released? Like it was physically on the show floor that you could look at it. Just the idea of doing something like that now. I mean, I guess we did get the Steam Deck 2 announcement at the time. Not Steam Deck 2, the Steam Deck Australia announcement at the time, but Yeah.
I just feel like with big boys being there, you kind of get that buzz that comes from that, the hype of going to check out demo for Ghost of Yotai or whatever whatever it might be in 12 months time kind of thing. And, anyway, news? Unless you've got thoughts, Nathan and Adam?
Nothing to say you guys haven't already covered.
Yeah, exactly.
James,
well then,
you're up.
Yeah. Oh, we're up. We're all up. We're all so excited to be here. Let's get this through lightning.
So bloody up.
Lightning round. Adam, talk to me about the Steam Deck.
Hell yeah. So we had the discussion, I think, as we were getting press badges about what the fuck Steam were doing at PAX. And we kind of collectively went, what if they're announcing that it's coming to Australia? How cool would that be? And then we collectively decided that was a fucking dumb idea because they wouldn't do it. And I think Nathan had the best prediction, which was they'd just be selling Steam cards, but you could put your name on it, like a fuck with buys Vegemite with your name on it.
We hated it, didn't we? But we were wrong.
We really did. But no, we walked in, big banners for Steam Deck. The press blast went out about an hour later. So yes, it is finally coming to Australia. You don't have to buy one on the grey market. Thank fuck that I didn't. So it will be, first shipments will be in November. So it looks like orders will open in November, more or less, I suppose. You can wish list it now, but there are 3 different versions, stupidly priced, like in a good way. It's wild how reasonable they are. So the Steam Deck LCD 256 gig model is $649. The OLED model 512 gigs is $899, and then the big boy OLED 1 terabyte is $1,049, which is miles cheaper than if you were to import one. So genuinely quite an exciting little announcement, and cool for people who are at PAX because they get to walk in the show floor and see them and go hands on and all that. But yeah, very, very welcome news, I think, for everyone.
So we never actually went hands on with the tech, did we? Like, we haven't actually possessed or held one of these things, have we?
Not during, like not in that little section, but there were a few different devs in the PAX Rising spot that actually were demoing the game on the Steam Deck. So I played my arms longer now on a Steam Deck, and oh god, it just made me want one even more.
So I played the Footy Bash menus on a Steam Deck.
Wild choice. Genuinely wild choice.
Yeah. Scrolled up and down a few times. It was great.
There you go.
I'm pleased to hear this. That's good.
Yeah. I'm also pleased to hear that Conscript won Game of the Year at the Australian Game Developer Awards.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Good for you, Conscript. Great game. Obviously, a fairly long list of award winners out of that show that you can go and look up for yourself. We don't need to go over all of them here, but Conscript did take home a fair few awards for the night, such as like excellence in art, as well as something that I am scrolling to right now.
Audio?
Yes.
No, it wasn't audio.
Sure. No, I don't think so. I think it was. Oh no, yeah, you're right. Excellence in emerging, sorry, is the other one as well. So, I think very, very, very well earned. That game has been a standout this year. Other winners: Max Mustard, Dumb Ways to Survive, Bears in Space. Got to look in for accessibility, which is very cool. Diets and Deities for excellence in music. Capes for narrative. And yeah,
cool. Congratulations! Shout outs to all those.
Yeah. Shout outs indeed. Tell you who might be doing some shouting right now would be Game Freak. There we go. We're getting through it, boys. So this is actually pretty huge news that doesn't seem to be.
Thank you, Zach.
We'll go with that.
Got him.
Did get him. Got him good. So as far as I understand, one of their employees suffered like a phishing scam basically, and it just blew the whole thing fucking wide open. This is a colossal leak on a scale which we never really see. It gave us a like unprecedented look at some of the history of the development of Pokemon, unused concepts, lore notes, sprite work, just stuff you never would think. Like I think builds of old versions of games are now out there as well as obviously looking ahead into the future, the new Switch Pokemon, which I always forget the name of that thing. But it has the code name of Gaia. It'll be Gen 10 Pokemon, and the Nintendo Switch 2 is apparently codenamed Ounce internally. So I guess do with that what you will. Yeah, like this.
It's also a
It's-
massive fucking
yeah.
shame because atop all of like the headline grabbing things, there was a whole shitload of personal data about like
Right.
past and present employees that got leaked as well. So amongst
Mhm.
all of like cool, we get to see how the sausage is made with the Pokemon games. Like the staff were also pretty heavily affected, which is always shit.
Yes. Yeah.
What
It's never
happens
what
to
you
that
want to see.
employee, do you reckon?
Ooh.
They trap him in a Pokeball forever.
That's
Mhm.
good. That's good.
God,
That's good.
I would not want to imagine.
No, I certainly wouldn't. Maybe you want to imagine a future in which Ubisoft goes private under Tencent, though. This is following, obviously, a pretty rough period of time for Ubisoft, the big Ubi. So Bloomberg is reporting that Tencent and the Guillemot family are having conversations for a major buyout of,
Can we have sorry to
Ubisoft.
interrupt? Can we have Zach pronounce the last name of old Eves?
Del Toro.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, sorry.
Close enough. No, look, obviously Ubi's what was it? Outlaws underperforming. I think Avatar underperformed. As Shadow's getting delayed into next year.
Skull and Bones.
It's just been Skull and Bones.
Quadruple
Skull
A.
and Bones. Yeah, wow. Anyway, yes, obviously, big bad year for big bad Ubisoft. Falling share prices, things are not looking particularly good. They have just a colossal overhead with all of their staff around the world. I can't even imagine what's going to go down if this sale goes through, if Tencent sort of acquires them. I think it was on SkillUp's weekly news show that the reported price would be 1.8 billion, which is quite low given that it's Ubisoft.
Yeah.
I think because their share
ouch.
prices in the
Well,
absolute
exactly.
burglar.
Yeah. Like
But they
since
must have
2018,
like
it's been such a
what
huge
20,000
collapse.
employees. How I'm just having a quick
Something like
Google
that.
now. It
That seems
does.
correct.
About
Yeah.
us.
Goodness.
45 studios, 30 countries, 20,000 employees.
Almost as big
Wowee.
as Well-Played.
Almost.
I mean,
Almost.
we're owned by Tencent. Nothing. We're still classic.
We're also no. Yeah, so not great things happening at Ubisoft at the moment. Shout outs,
If only they could have foreseen this happening.
Yes, maybe they would have if they'd been able to drag themselves out of bed earlier.
So good. That one was genuinely good.
Thank you.
That
Nintendo.
was a joke, guys. That was a reference.
Yes, it was a joke. It was a transitionary headline. Don't worry about it. Tell you though, Nintendo's alarm clock, Alarmo. God damn, it's the first time I've ever said that out loud. Actually, that's awful. But yeah, this
Specifically
thing.
for single people.
Yes, yeah. So it uses like a motion scanner to get increasingly louder and more aggressive if you don't wake up. You can choose from 35 different scenes across 5 Nintendo properties, including obviously your big boys, your Super Mario Odyssey, your Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 3 Pikmin. And I mean, the biggest thing on here as well, Ring Fit Adventure. Exactly what you want to be waking you up in the morning. You can go in for a raffle, I think, to be able to buy this. You can't just buy it outright. 99 US, so fuck knows what it's going to cost here.
160 Australian dollars.
A single alarm clock.
You can't just buy it.
No.
What the?
It's also ugly.
It is awful to look at. It really, really is awful to look at.
Yeah.
And I also just like, I don't know if I want to be woken up by a link going,
yeah.
Like, that sounds like a fucking, or
louder
I
and
think
louder.
I said this to someone. Imagine if your wake up is, hey, listen, like you'd actively throw that shit across the room.
Well, like if this is successful, what does this open the door to? Imagine like this gets beyond Nintendo's control. We get like Family Guy equivalents and shit like this, with just obnoxious soundboards.
Well,
That must exist.
Nintendo back in the day ran like pleasure hotels, so maybe they get back into that.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
We're down.
If you were looking to escape the horrible sounds of the alarmo, though, you could head up to space where no one can hear you scream or your alarm. We are finally getting a sequel to Alien Isolation 10 years after the fact. This has been announced by that company that makes those games.
Creative
We all know the
Assembly?
one.
Sega?
Creative Assembly and Sega, I want to
Mhm.
say. That is correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, look, this is a bit of an odd one because I think Alien Isolation has obviously garnered a cult following over the years since its release, middling to positive reviews at the time. And I think that most people who played this thing really enjoyed it until the last 3 hours, maybe, when it kind of fell apart. But look, it was very cool. It was very pretty. Zach, your opinion on this does not matter to me at all. And yeah, so now they're back at it again. We don't know what we're getting. It could be aliens, could be another just straight up survival horror. Who knows?
Give me
But yeah.
AVP.
I also think it's good to see that Creative Assembly aren't just getting wheeled out to die, like the developer side of things,
Yes.
because Hyenas got cancelled, which was a really insanely
Mm.
expensive kind of flop for Sega.
Mhm.
So it's good to see that they're kind of being just put back to where they are comfortable and what they want to be doing. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I completely agree. Avatar's getting an RPG. I'm done. I'm tired. I couldn't think of anything, so we had to dive in on that one. Surprising, I think, almost everybody. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know what happened there.
Oh.
Is getting its first AAA action RPG adaptation. IGN is reporting that Paramount Game Studios and Saber Interactive, of all people, are teaming up to give the biggest video game in Avatar franchise history. This is, I mean, whatever. Like, cool. I don't care one way or the other if this gets made. Happy days for people who are excited for this. What I am concerned about is Saber Interactive announcing yet another massive game that they're apparently working on, while the KOTOR remake is apparently still just in the ether somewhere. So I don't know if maybe this is one of the situations where Paramount Game Studio is stepping up to do the bulk of it and Saber is just assisting. But it does seem like a lot of lofty promises are being made around Saber 2.0.
Yeah, it'll
Mm.
be interesting. I think the 40K game kind of did wonders for people thinking, oh, they can do great things with existing IP. So yeah, I agree. I hope that they don't take on more than is possible. And I'm guessing we won't see this for fucking ages either. So who knows?
No, exactly right. PS6.
Ugh.
Yeah, no. Anyway, that's the news.
Rock on. Good stuff, James. Well done.
Thanks.
Proud
mate.
of you. No worries, buddy. All right, off topics. Let's go whiz bang through them. Slow Horses finished up season 4. Yeah, I think it's my least favorite season thus far.
It's a shame.
See, season 5 looks pretty good though. Can't wait to see that.
Wait, is that a joke or is there actually
No,
season
that the
5
seasons
happening?
always end with an extended preview of the next season,
Mm.
which I
buy
always
that.
thought quite surprising.
Mm. Yeah. Before we move on, very, 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 very exciting news for me personally. It's been six long years, but Breaking Benjamin are finally putting out a new song. Very, very excited. That should drop maybe tomorrow of recording, but it will be out by the time the potty's out. So 6 long fucking years, and I'm very keen. James, what you watched?
Yeah. I watched Hellboy the Crooked Man.
Ooh.
Oh God, was it terrible?
No.
Yes.
Oh,
I don't think it was good either. But basically it's like a
like
sandwich
Neva.
film, right? No, Never's much better than this. No, you've got like the first, I don't know, 15 odd minutes is this catastrophically bad action fan film kind of vibe. Then it settles into about 40 odd minutes of genuinely pretty okay folk horror weirdness where it's just a bunch of characters sitting around spooky houses going, trauma can manifest as ghosts or whatever. Loved it. Had a really great time with that section of the film specifically. And then it just kind of lurches back into progressively more and more boring action stuff. So Not the disaster I think people are making it out to be. Not good either, but very much the direction I would like to see them go with these films in the future. If we can't do Guillermo, that's totally fine. Let's do this instead. Let's do weird indie horror instead, because it's a good concept. It's just not amazing execution.
Yeah, I'd like to check this one out. I've read a lot of Hellboy, and I like the idea of him going something a little more low key with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think you'll find
always
something
thought
to appreciate.
Yeah, I always thought Del Toro's ones, like I love them, but I always thought they were a weird adaptation, that they were quite like heavy spectacle.
Yeah. Movies.
Who's up next? Who wants to?
Mine's lightning fast because you mentioned music. Ocean Alley released a new song called Tangerine. It's an absolute fucking banger. I love it to death. You should all listen to it. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, that's it for me.
Cool.
Nothing more.
Cool. I'll round us out then. I'm still reading books. I'm on my book era. It's bloody good. I'm going through the second of the Wheel of Time books by Robert Jordan. This is a series or saga that's known for its how long it is. It's 14 books long, and the author died like 3/4 through. Some other bloke had to pick it up. I've enjoyed it. I'm in for the long haul, baby. I've almost finished the second book in like 3 weeks. I'm just smashing through, and they're like 700-page books. There's 14 of them.
Jesus Christ!
You and I are having
what will happen first? Will I beat WellPlayed, or will I beat the saga? Tune in 10 years' time. The Prime adaptation's pretty good, I think, too. Like I enjoy it.
I heard season 2 got pretty good.
I
haven't watched it.
It seems season 2 seems to take a bit of a different tack to the book, but not in a way that I'm finding that bothers me.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's better than The Witcher.
Oof.
Adaptation, that is.
Yikes. Yes.
Nice.
That's off topics.
Well, James is going to finish us off.
I am. Let's do it. Rose De Silva takes. All right now. Rose De Silva takes her adopted daughter Sharon to a town in an attempt to cure her of an ailment. After a violent car crash, Sharon disappears, and Rose begins a journey to get her back.
Sharon as the name of a child is upsetting to me.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Shazza.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a single bell.
Indeed.
Makes you think.
It does make me think.
I'm trying to read the other summaries to see if any of them help more, but it is they are pretty spoilery.
Can we get a casting?
Oh, I mean, you can, but I don't know how much it's going to help you, but I will do it for you. Give me 2 seconds. I need to pull up the IMDb. We are looking at Rada Mitchell in the lead role.
Oh, I do like Rada Mitchell. Wait, hang on. Go again on the thing, on the actual synopsis.
Oh, God, that's a different page, mate. All right, hang on. We're getting there.
Is this Silent Hill?
It is.
Yeah.
Look at him go.
Yeah. I was going to give you Sean Bean, but that felt too easy. So
big week.
Sean Bean would have been harder.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Well, it's not the first role you think of when you think Sean Bean, is it? Really?
True. Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
about 6, 7 down the list.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good film. That first
Sean
one
Bean
was
honestly,
honestly
this
good.
one?
Yeah.
No.
Of course he does.
In the Discworld, mate.
But yes.
Discworld.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting little adaptation. I cannot wait to see what that director's going to do when he has to adapt Silent Hill 2, because it already looks like shit. So fun times ahead.
Well, it can't be any worse than that fucking sequel that they did. God almighty.
Oh, that is. I know.
Wait, which one does Pyramid Head like rip the skin off someone all in one motion?
It's in the first one, isn't
I
it?
think it's the first one.
It's also got the little like scalded babies.
Oh yes, that the movie's not bad. The skin thing shook the shit out of me. I'll be honest. When I first watched it, it got me good. Ugh.
All right, nice stuff. Okay.
Very good.
Quick, bring it in under 2 hours. Go on.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the WellPlayed DLC podcast. You can check all the content on www.well-played.com.au. Some PAX stuff, a little bit of reviews there for you to bite into. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Go listen to the new Breaking Benjamin track. Go listen to the new Ocean Valley. No, that sounds like a drink. What's the band you like?
Ocean Alley. Thanks, mate.
Ocean Alley. I was close. See you next week.
Bye.
He's done it.
Good job having you. Good job.
Hey.
See you, bye.
Thanks, bye.